Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So today we are going to fact check the fact checkers. I always have fun doing this because oftentimes these fact checks that come out by organizations like Reuters and AP, they end up not being exactly factual on their own. Or when they're fact checking, they end up proving the conspiracy theorists right. So we're going to do that today. This is the latest fact check that was put out by Reuters. Here it is. False claims that COVID-19 vaccine producers skipped animal trials due to the animals dying have resurfaced online. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson conducted these trials and had no significant safety concerns to report. Okay, so what they're referring to is that online over the last few days on social media, it was trending that the vaccine skipped animal trials. And this is something that trends every so often. It started in 2020 and then in 2021, and we'll get to that. And now it's trending again. So this is why Reuters decides, well, we better come out with one of our fact checks. So I want to share with, well, let me just read to you a little bit about what they're saying in their fact check. So they say posts claiming that COVID-19 vaccine producers skipped animal trials due to the animals in those trials dying are false. Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, which have been granted emergency authorization use by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, all conducted animal trials and had no significant safety concerns to report. So they're saying it is not true that animal trials were skipped, and it's not true that the animals died because of the vaccine, and that is why, and then the, and so trials were halted. They go on to say, some posts, so they're talking about the social media posts, include video of a hearing by the Texas State Senate and the text, COVID jab. They skipped all animal trials because all animals were dying and went directly to people. Okay. So then they refer to the video, and I'm going to play you the video that is being referred to, but they say that the Texas State Senator, Bob Hall, begins questioning pediatrician Angelina Farella about the COVID-19 vaccines skipping animal trials. Hall says that animal trials were skipped due to the animals dying, and Farella says she agrees. So watch this video.
And have you seen any other vaccine that was put out for the public that skipped the animal test?
Never before, especially for children.
And what I've read, they actually started the animal test, and because the animals were dying, they stopped the test.
Correct.
Folks, I think that's important to understand there, that what we're talking about is the American people are now the guinea pigs. This is the test program that's going on. They didn't do the human testing, and they stopped the animal test because the animals were dying, and then they turned it out for the public. And we are now looking at businesses that want to mandate that this experimental vaccine be given to people as a condition of their employment. And yet we have this death count that continues to rise and be totally ignored.
Okay. So that's the video that people are talking about. And then that was trending and causing Reuters to want to do this fact check. So other websites have fact checked this in the past. This one is from Full Fact, and this is from April 14th of 2021. And they say, what was claimed, all animals used in COVID-19 vaccine trials died months later from immune disorders, sepsis, and or cardiac failure. Our verdict. There is no evidence for this. The claim is based on a 2012 study looking at different vaccines. The animals, in this case mice, were euthanized as standard procedure in this sort of trial. They did not die months later as claimed. Okay, so the mice were euthanized, which is why they did not die months later. They were euthanized within a week of the trial. That is what is standard, and we'll get to that even further. Now, they're saying that in this particular instance, this false claim that was going around social media, because this was put out by Full Fact in April of 2021. So they're saying that the claim was based on a 2012 study looking at different vaccines and whatnot. So they go on to say, well, no, that was a different study, different vaccine. Okay, that's fair enough. But let's talk about the COVID vaccines. So they then answer that question. Did animals die in the COVID-19 vaccine trials? And they say, as we've written before, the COVID-19 vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, have been tested on animals. So they're asserting that this did not get skipped. Animals were tested on. Chris McGee, head of policy and media at UK nonprofit Understanding Animal Research, told Full Fact that in the case of COVID-19 vaccines, data already existed to indicate the vaccines were safe, which enabled researchers to run animal trials alongside the early stages of human trials. So let's back that up just a second here. Hold on a minute. So they were saying that data already existed in the case of COVID-19 vaccine. So what they're meaning by that is, and I'm not actually 100% certain what they're referring to with AstraZeneca, but certainly Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA vaccines. AstraZeneca is not. The mRNA vaccines had been in development for years, not on COVID-19 or coronaviruses, but for other viruses. So maybe they're saying, well, we tested mRNAs on previously when we were developing them for other viruses, and there were no issues. The problem with that is there have been no other mRNA vaccines that have successfully come to market. Never. In the history of mRNAs, this is the first time that it's ever come to market. So why did those other vaccines that they were testing with mRNAs, why did they not come to market? How could they look at those that didn't come to market and say, well, they're safe? I mean, these are products that don't exist. They tested them, they failed, and they're saying to us, but they're safe. We tested for safety. Well, how do you, I mean, okay, maybe you tested the actual technology of mRNA, possibly, but when you mix mRNA technology with a certain virus or another virus, you might get totally different results. I think that's kind of basic thinking for anybody. I mean, if you use it for something like a coronavirus, you might end up with a different outcome than if you use it for something is something completely different. And when they were testing mRNA vaccines in the past, they were not for things like viruses, but a lot of times for things like genetic disorders. So, how do they extrapolate previous trials on failed concoctions of whatever it is, vaccine or other type of therapeutic? How do they then extrapolate that and then say for COVID-19 vaccines, they're totally safe? But nonetheless, okay, so they're claiming, well, we already ran those safety trials. So what we got to do was run animal trials at the same time as human trials. So they weren't skipped, they were done concurrently. Which sounds to me like skipped, right? I mean, okay, we're going to get into the word game, and Reuters and this Full Fact and even AP, and we'll get to their fact check on this. They all claim, well, no, you're not being totally accurate, right? The animals did not die because of the vaccine. We euthanized the animals within 7 days of getting the vaccine. So you're not totally accurate. Okay, so they don't even say you're not totally accurate. They say you're wrong, you're false. And in reality, it's, okay, play on words. Is it any better that you guys euthanize the animals 7 days after giving them these vaccines? We now don't know the long-term side effects in an animal because you euthanize them in 7 days. And then they say, we didn't skip the animal trials. You're false. That's false. Fake news. We ran those trials concurrently. So at the same time was when we did that. Now, Full Fact goes on to say, had the animals died during this process, the human trials would have been immediately halted. The fact that they were not indicates the animals did not die unexpectedly. No, they died very expectedly. They were euthanized 7 days after the trial. That was not unexpected at all. They died expectedly. And we'll get into the number of animals because that is something that also matters. How many animals did they use to conduct these trials? Full Fact goes on to say, he also said animals used in drug trials are usually euthanized, so scientists can examine their internal organs for signs of pathology. So he's saying that's normal. We always euthanize the animals. Okay, then. So if that's the case, then you didn't really fully conduct long-term studies, which you normally would be looking for. I mean, I would like to know how often the animals are truly euthanized. When they're looking for long-term side effects, do they always euthanize the animals in 7 days? That seems like that wouldn't make any sense. So Full Fact goes on to say, there's no evidence to substantiate claims that the animals died months later from other conditions as described in the post. So they say, false news, fake news, you guys are liars, conspiracy theorists. Okay, AP, now they also fact-checked this. And this is what they say on this. Uh, Due to the urgent need for a vaccine in a surging pandemic, Pfizer and Moderna were given approval to simultaneously test their vaccines on animals while they were conducting phase 1 trials on humans. The vaccines were tested on mice and macaques. So macaques is like a primate, like a type of monkey, I believe. Says they overlapped preclinical studies with the early phases of the trials, says Dr. William Moss, executive director for the International Vaccine Access Center at Johns Hopkins University. In fact, one of the reasons we're even talking about vaccines now, just 10 months later, is that some of the phases in which vaccine development normally occurs were overlapped rather than done sequentially. Does that make you feel better? And this AP article, by the way, was written in 2020. So this was November of 2020. And they're saying, isn't it a miracle? And the reason why we can get them out so fast is because we didn't skip the animal trials. We just decided to do them at the same time as rolling these out to people. And the AP article goes on to say that University of Pennsylvania professor of medicine, Dr. Drew Weissman, who's been studying mRNA and mRNA vaccines for decades, said they do not cause dangerous inflammation to animals. Along with the vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna, both passing animal trials, they also passed clinical trials on humans where they were tested on more than 70,000 people. Goes on to say, and this is key, this is a quote from Dr. Weissman. Clinical trials for 75,000 people show it's safe and it's 95% effective. That's pretty good data to convince people that it's okay. Except we found out that that's not true, right? They tested it. We've been in real world trials at this point, and we now know that it is not halting the spread of the virus at all, really. Very, very, very minor reduction in spread only very soon after you get the vaccine. Actually, not even very soon after you get the vaccine, but after it takes hold in your system for a while, because the first 2 weeks, you're actually quite vulnerable. You haven't developed any antibodies. So the first 2 weeks, you're not really vaccinated, they say. In fact, your immune system seems to weaken a little bit in those first 2 weeks. You are very susceptible to catching it, to spreading it. So they're saying that 95% effectiveness is after those 2 weeks have happened and your body has developed antibodies. And then in which case they're saying it's 95% effective. We have now seen that not to be true. That's why we have many boosters now. So you have to get more than these 2 doses. And remember, this was written in 2020 when it was just 2 doses. 2 doses to stop the spread, 95% effective. Now we're on to, we're looking at the 5th dose here pretty soon in the fall when they roll out their new vaccine for Omicron, which then they'll say is not actually a 5th dose. They'll be like, no, it's number 1 dose of the Omicron variant. And then you need to do 4 doses of that variant. So you're kind of getting the idea here that these so-called the fact check on animal trials not happening or animal trials were halted. What was the original? So the original claim here, again, false claims that COVID-19 vaccine producers skipped animal trials due to the animals dying have resurfaced online. So we know they didn't skip the animal trials. They did them at the same time as human trials. And the animals didn't die from getting the vaccine. The animals were euthanized 7 days later. So there would be no way for them to know about the long-term side effects that we are now finding out about. So I think a big question, and the spirit of when people were saying they skipped animal trials, the reason why people were saying that was because they were saying, so why would you want to experiment with this on me? Like, why do you want to give this to me when you didn't go through the full due process of making sure that this met safety protocols? I'm not comfortable with this because you've skipped all of this. And they're saying, we didn't skip it. We did it at the same time. That doesn't make anybody who has that feeling feel any better. Okay. Saying, well, we did it at the same time. Now, also one thing to note, and this is something that came up actually, Forbes actually covered this in their article. And they talked about the number of monkeys and what happened with those monkeys and with the macaques essentially that were given the vaccine. It was only about 20 macaques that were given either the vaccine or a placebo or something totally different. I want to say it was only 6 actually received the vaccine. I could be wrong on that number, but it was a very, very small number. I mean, even if it was 20 who received it, let's say it was all of them, 20 of them received it, that's still not a very large number of macaques receiving this vaccine. And what they found in the study was that it didn't stop the spread at all. Every macaque that was vaccinated or unvaccinated, all of them got COVID when they exposed them to COVID. So that early trial showed no difference in getting the vaccine. What happened was, though, they put the macaques down, they euthanized them after 7 days, and then they did autopsies on them. And when they did autopsies, and this is why they say, well, see, it's effective in animals, so therefore let's continue forward. They looked at the lungs, and they found that some of the lungs of the unvaccinated macaques showed signs of pneumonia, whereas the vaccinated macaques did not show signs of pneumonia. Now, what level of signs, to what extent were those signs present in the lungs? They don't really say that. It didn't look like it was significant. COVID doesn't really affect these primates as severely as it does humans, it seems. So, but they opened them up and they said, okay, well, we see evidence of worse disease over here, less disease over there. So it works. It works. Everything's cool. But they didn't test for those long-term side effects. They didn't test to see what would happen beyond 7 days. They put them down in that time frame. So that's the fact check on the fact check for you. I just wanted to go over this, that, okay, fine. If we're going to get into semantics, then sure, the animal trials weren't skipped. They were done at the same time as being rolled out to humans. The animal trials weren't skipped. They were done. But then a question we have is, but how thoroughly were they done? How thoroughly are they normally done compared to how they were done this time? Do you normally test it on thousands of animals or even hundreds of them over the span of 15, 20 years or 5 years, or even just certainly longer than a few months? What was the scope of the animal testing, and what is normal, what normally happens? Now, there's no law saying they have to even do any of that. That's why they got away with it. They were saying, well, we don't even have to do this. We can skip ahead because we're doing this warp speed thing. But they typically always do. When they say, so the animals didn't die from the vaccine, that's again semantics. You're right. They weren't dead because of the vaccine. They were dead because they euthanized them after testing. So those are the semantics, play on words. It's, once again, they did not, the way they frame these fact checks, though, is they want to make you believe, if you're just somebody skimming headlines and you believe everything that comes out of establishment news, and you're skimming the headlines and you see fact check, this did not happen, and you hear your family or your friends saying, they skipped animal trials and blah, blah, blah. You're sitting there thinking, because you read that fact check headline, if you're an establishment media consumer, you're thinking, no, they didn't. I saw Reuters put that out. AP put that out. You are fake news. And that they do these headlines just so that people have the ammunition to be able to say that. But in reality, if anybody sat and read the article with a critical mind, they would say, okay, yeah, okay, you're right. They didn't skip the animal trials. They didn't, the animals didn't die because of the vaccine. But what you are telling me doesn't make me feel any better about it. So there's the fact check for you guys. Thank you so much for watching The Kim Iversen Show. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of my episodes. Also, down below is a link to my locals community. Be sure to join that. That's where we do casual live streams. People in my locals community get information before anybody else, and we chat amongst ourselves there in that community, so be sure to join there. Also, sign up for my email newsletter. That is also how you will find out about my latest episodes or appearances on other shows. I will be emailing that out periodically, the things that have been going on with the shows, just to make sure you don't, because the notifications, we all know that there's censorship. You might not get the notifications even if you do hit the bell. So sign up for my email newsletter so that you can get those direct notifications from me. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again tomorrow.